Questions people are afraid to ask a psychic. Curses, cheating, death, twin flames, money, and the truth about psychic readings. G-Day, my beautiful souls. It's Sarah Kulkens here. Now today I want to have a slightly different conversation with you, a very honest one, because there are questions people ask psychics publicly, and then there are the questions they ask when the door closes, when nobody else is listening, when they know they're not going to be judged. And after doing this work for so many years, I can tell you there is a very big difference between the two. People might book a psychic reading saying, Sarah, I just want to know what's happening with my career. Or do you think I'll move house? Or the old favourite, am I going to meet somebody? And yes, of course, those are all completely normal questions. But then we sit down, the cards come out, we start talking, and eventually the real question appears. Am I cursed? Is my partner cheating on me? Will my ex come back? Are they really my twin flame? Can you tell me when I'm going to die? Is my loved one on the other side angry with me? Am I going to lose everything? Those are the questions people are often terrified to ask a psychic. And they're the questions I want to talk about today. Because behind nearly every frightening psychic question is something very human: fear, grief, loneliness, guilt, betrayal, financial stress, or simply the fear of not knowing what comes next. And there should never be shame in admitting that. I grew up around this world. I grew up watching my mum, Kerry Kulkens, helping people through some of the most difficult moments of their lives. Our family's connection with psychic and metaphysical work goes back generations. I'm the 7th generation, and today that family tradition continues through the 8th and 9th generations as well. So believe me when I say I've heard some questions. Very few things surprise me anymore. But there is something I want to make very clear before we begin. An ethical psychic reading should never make you frightened of the psychic. It should never make you dependent on the psychic. And it should never convince you that somebody else has complete control over your destiny. A good reading should ultimately bring the power back to you. So let's talk about the questions people are sometimes too frightened to ask. Am I cursed? Has someone put a hex or the evil eye on me? Oh, this is probably one of the biggest ones. People will sometimes lean towards me and almost whisper it. Sarah, do you think somebody has cursed me? Has someone put a hex on me? Is somebody doing black magic against me? Or do I have the evil eye? And usually this question comes after a run of absolutely awful luck. Maybe a relationship has fallen apart, then something goes wrong financially, then the car breaks down, then there's an argument with the family, and suddenly the person thinks, this cannot possibly be normal. Somebody must be doing something to me. Tinder readings. So let me answer one of the most commonly searched questions about psychic readings. How do you know if you are cursed? For me, the first thing is not to assume that you are. In fact, in my experience, most people who come to me frightened that they have been cursed have not been cursed at all. Sometimes life simply goes through very difficult periods. Sometimes several things go wrong at once. Sometimes we've ignored warning signs. Sometimes we're staying in situations that simply aren't right for us anymore. And sometimes we're exhausted, emotionally overwhelmed, and desperately looking for one explanation that makes everything make sense. That does not mean somebody is attacking you spiritually. Now, do I believe we can be affected by the atmosphere around other people? Absolutely. Most of us have walked into a room after an argument and immediately thought, ooh, something happened in here. We can feel tension. We can feel when somebody's angry. We can feel when an environment doesn't feel right to us. If you're particularly sensitive or empathic, you may notice those things very strongly. But feeling someone else's negativity does not automatically mean you've been cursed. And this is where psychic ethics become incredibly important. If you ever go to a psychic who tells you you have a terrible curse on your family, and then immediately says, but if you give me another $1,000, I can remove it, please be very, very careful. Fear is an extraordinarily powerful sales technique, and unfortunately, there are people who use spirituality that way. An ethical psychic should not create a frightening problem and then make themselves the only person capable of fixing it. For me, spiritual guidance should be the opposite. It should help you feel grounded. It should help you look at patterns. It should help you establish boundaries. And it should remind you that you still have choices. So when somebody asks me, am I cursed? My first response is usually, let's look at what is actually happening in your life, because the answer is very often found there, not in fear. Can a psychic tell if my partner is cheating? Now, this one is difficult and incredibly emotional. Someone sits down, they look at me, and eventually they say, Sarah, is there somebody else? Is my husband cheating? Is my wife cheating? Is my partner lying to me? And the fear behind that question can be enormous. So, can a psychic tell if someone is cheating? This is where I think people need to understand what an ethical reading can and cannot do. A psychic reading is not forensic evidence. It is not surveillance. And I'm certainly not a private investigator. If somebody suspects their partner is cheating, I don't believe it is responsible simply to declare, yes, they definitely are, particularly when that statement could completely change somebody's life. What I can explore in a reading is the relationship itself. Does there appear to be emotional distance? Are there secrets? Has communication broken down? Does the person sitting in front of me feel safe and respected? What patterns are appearing? What is their intuition trying to tell them? And sometimes that leads us towards a much more important question. Not, can I catch them cheating? But why do I feel so unsafe in this relationship? Because suspicion alone isn't proof of infidelity. But feeling constantly anxious, mistrustful, or disrespected tells us that something in the relationship needs attention. Maybe it's infidelity. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's poor communication. Maybe trust has been damaged by something that happened years ago. Maybe the relationship has simply reached a point where an honest conversation needs to happen. Whatever it is, the reading should help you understand your position, your boundaries, your needs, and your worth. Because nobody should have to spend every evening checking someone's phone, analysing whether a text message sounds different or wondering where they were 20 minutes ago. That isn't peace. So if somebody asked me whether their partner is cheating, I will explore what comes through in the reading, but I also bring the focus back to the person sitting in front of me. Because your happiness cannot depend entirely upon discovering somebody else's secrets. Can a psychic predict death? Now we come to probably the most serious question of all. Sarah, when am I going to die? Or sometimes, can you tell me when Mum will pass? How long does Dad have? Can a psychic predict somebody's death? And my answer to that is very clear. I do not predict death. I won't give somebody a date. I won't tell somebody they have 6 months. I won't tell them something terrible is going to happen on a particular day. That has always been an important ethical boundary within the way I work. Why? Because imagine what happens psychologically when you tell somebody something terrible is going to happen in October. They may spend every day between now and October frightened. Every phone call becomes frightening. Every headache becomes frightening. Every car journey becomes frightening. And when October arrives, they may barely be able to function. I don't believe spiritual guidance should do that to somebody. The future is influenced by choices, circumstances, and events that can change. And there are simply some areas where I believe humility is incredibly important, particularly where health and death are concerned. If somebody is worried about their health, I want them talking to a qualified medical professional. If somebody they love is seriously unwell, I want them receiving proper medical information and support. A psychic should never replace that. But spiritually, we can still ask meaningful questions. How can I make the most of the time I have with this person? What do I need to say? Is there something I need to forgive? How can I be more present? What does this relationship mean to me? Those are questions that can actually help us live. Because if we become obsessed with knowing exactly when life will end, sometimes we forget to live the bit happening right now, and that would be a terrible shame. Will my ex come back? Right, let's talk about the ex. Because if you have ever worked as a psychic for more than about 5 minutes, you will hear this question. Will they come back? Do they still love me? Are they thinking about me? Will my ex contact me? And one that has become particularly common in recent years. Are they my twin flame? Now, this is an area where I think modern internet spirituality has created a lot of confusion. The idea of a twin flame can be beautiful when people interpret it as a spiritual metaphor for growth and self-discovery. But I become concerned when people use the idea to justify relationships that are repeatedly cruel, manipulative, or destructive. Sometimes someone tells me they disappear for 6 months. They lie to me. They come back. They break my heart. They disappear again. But Sarah, maybe we're twin flames because we keep being drawn back together. And I will usually say, or perhaps we need to look at why this relationship keeps hurting you, because pain is not automatically proof of spiritual destiny. Chaos is not automatically passion. And somebody treating you badly is certainly not proof that the universe wants you to spend the rest of your life waiting for them. One of the most common questions people ask online is, will my ex come back? Well, sometimes ex-partners do come back. That happens every day. But there's another question I think is far more important. If they come back, has anything actually changed? Has the behaviour changed? Has communication improved? Has trust been rebuilt? Have you changed? Have they? Or are the two of you simply about to start the same cycle all over again? Sometimes people become emotionally attached to the idea that reunion itself is the happy ending. But reunion and reconciliation are two very different things. Somebody returning doesn't automatically mean the relationship will suddenly become healthy. And this can be one of the hardest truths to accept. A psychic should never encourage you to wait indefinitely for someone who repeatedly hurts you because they're supposedly your destined twin flame. Your spiritual path should help you become stronger, not smaller. Sometimes the spiritual lesson is reunion. Sometimes it's forgiveness. And sometimes the lesson is learning when to let go. Is my loved one who passed away angry with me? This one gets me, because underneath this question is almost always guilt. People come for mediumship after losing someone they love, and they ask, do they know I loved them? Are they angry that I wasn't there? Do they forgive me? Do they know I'm sorry? Why didn't I answer the phone? Why did our last conversation have to be an argument? Grief has an awful habit of going backwards through our memories and finding every tiny thing we think we should have done differently. We replay conversations, we replay decisions, we remember things we said 20 years ago, and somehow we convince ourselves that one mistake represents the entire relationship. In my own spiritual belief and mediumship work, I see the transition from life very differently. I believe spirit has a broader perspective than we have while we're living our everyday human lives. And when people ask me, is my loved one angry with me after death? The message I try to bring them back to is compassion. Look at the whole relationship, not one moment, not one argument, not one hospital visit you missed, not the final phone call, the whole relationship, the love, the laughter, the difficult bits, the beautiful bits. The ordinary Tuesday afternoons nobody thinks are important until somebody is gone. And sometimes the person asking, do they forgive me, is really asking, am I allowed to forgive myself? And I think that is an incredibly important question, because carrying guilt forever does not prove how much you loved somebody. Sometimes honouring them means allowing yourself to live again, to laugh again, to travel, to fall in love, to enjoy your children, to enjoy your grandchildren, to have a beautiful life. That isn't betrayal, that is living. Am I going to lose everything? And finally, money, business, housing, jobs, survival. People sometimes sit down with me and ask, Sarah, am I going to lose my house? Is my business going to fail? Will I ever have money? Am I destined to struggle financially forever? Money questions can carry enormous fear because money isn't just numbers in a bank account. Money is tied to security, food, housing, family, freedom, and our sense of whether tomorrow is going to be all right. In some spiritual traditions, those feelings of safety and stability are symbolically associated with the root chakra. And when our sense of security is shaken, well, everything can suddenly feel frightening. But this is another area where I think psychic guidance has to remain grounded. If you are facing serious financial difficulty, please speak with the appropriate financial, legal, or professional advisors. A psychic reading should not replace practical action. What a reading can sometimes help with is perspective. What am I not seeing? Am I holding on to something purely because I'm frightened of change? Is there another opportunity I've dismissed? Where do I need stronger boundaries? What practical step can I take next? Because when we're terrified, our world can become very small. All we can see is the disaster. Sometimes the first step is simply shifting from, my entire life is ruined, to two, right, what can I actually do today? Maybe there is a difficult period ahead. I'm not interested in pretending everything is wonderful when it isn't, but difficult periods pass. Careers change, businesses evolve, people rebuild, new opportunities appear, and sometimes the path we thought was a complete disaster becomes the thing that pushes us towards a completely different life. We usually only understand that afterwards. So how can you tell if a psychic is genuine? This brings me to something incredibly important. People often ask, how can you tell a genuine psychic from a fake psychic? For me, there are some very simple warning signs. Be cautious if somebody constantly frightens you. Be cautious if every reading suddenly leads to another expensive service you supposedly must purchase. Be cautious if they tell you only they can remove a curse, save your relationship, or prevent something terrible from happening. Be cautious if they try to isolate you from your own judgment. And please be cautious if they start making you feel as though you cannot make a decision without asking them first. That isn't empowerment. That isn't empowerment. That is dependency. A psychic should be a guide, not the owner of your future. I have always believed that a good reading should leave you with greater clarity about your own choices. You should walk away feeling more capable of making decisions, not less. You still have free will, you still have responsibility, you still have common sense, and yes, you still have to do the work. No deck of tarot cards is going to come around and have that difficult conversation for you. Unfortunately, I've been waiting years for mine to start doing the housework as well. No luck yet. What are people really asking a psychic? So when we look at all of these questions together, am I cursed? Are they cheating? When am I going to die? Will my ex come back? Is my loved one angry with me? Am I going to lose everything? They sound like completely different questions, but underneath them, they're often asking something very similar. Am I going to be all right? That's the question. Am I safe? Am I lovable? Can I survive this? Have I ruined everything? Does somebody still care about me? Is there hope? And that is why I believe the reading room can be such a sacred place. Not because a psychic knows every detail of your future, and certainly not because a psychic should control your decisions, but because sometimes people need somewhere they can finally say the thing they have been too embarrassed, frightened, or ashamed to say anywhere else. They need somewhere they can say, I still love someone who hurt me. I'm terrified my marriage is ending. I'm frightened about money. I feel guilty about someone who died. I'm scared there's something spiritually wrong with me. And hear somebody say, all right, let's look at this together. No shock, no judgment, no fear, just honesty, compassion, and hopefully a little bit of clarity. The truth about ethical psychic readings. So my beautiful souls, if you remember only one thing from this video, remember this: a psychic reading should not take your power away. It should help you reconnect with it. It should not frighten you into spending money. It should not tell you that your future is completely fixed. It should not encourage you to remain in dangerous or unhealthy situations because somebody is supposedly your spiritual destiny. And it should never replace qualified medical, legal, psychological, or financial support when that is what you genuinely need. Spiritual guidance can sit alongside those things. It doesn't need to compete with them. And I think that is where genuine spiritual work becomes incredibly powerful. You can have intuition and common sense, spirituality and practicality, hope and personal responsibility. They belong together. So if there is a question sitting quietly in your heart that you've been frightened to ask, please know that you are probably not the first person who has asked it, and you certainly won't be the last. Human beings worry, we grieve, we fall in love with the wrong people, we make mistakes, we panic about money, we wonder about death, we occasionally convince ourselves the neighbour has cursed us because 3 appliances broke in the same week. We're human. And human beings have been asking questions about the unknown for thousands of years. There is no shame in that. If you choose to have a psychic reading, choose someone who respects your free will, someone who doesn't frighten you, someone who can say, I don't know, someone who understands boundaries, and someone who helps you walk away feeling stronger than when you arrived. That, to me, is what ethical psychic guidance should be. I'm Sarah Kulkens. And if you have one of those questions that you've been carrying quietly and you'd like to explore it privately, you can visit my website and have a look at my private reading options. We can talk about what's weighing on your heart, look at the situation from a spiritual and practical perspective, and help you find the path that feels right for you. Until next time, look after yourself, trust your intuition, but keep your feet firmly on the ground as well. sending you courage, clarity, protection, and lots of beautiful, positive energy. Blessings. And bye for now. Sarah Kulkens, trademark,